Hello everybody. So today I want to talk about 4 stocks that have been on my radar over the past few months and they've been getting slightly cheaper. The first stock I want to talk about is TransMedics. TransMedics is the organ transplant company that has implemented their organ care system, which is a system that kind of disrupts dry ice for organ transplant. They use this FDA-approved device, which is an organ care system, and they have their organ care system where they have an airline where they allow hospitals to easily transfer organs to patients. So they are capturing the market by 2 angles. One is a FDA-approved medical device that can keep organs alive for longer, and another one is a nationwide system that allows for the transfer and delivery of organs through their own airplanes. That's the business. This business has been dropping actually 19% since I last covered it, and down 27% from the recent peak. And the only explanation I could find, provided that these explanations can be believed for the drop, is that there's been some news about someone who got awoken as organs were being harvested, and so because of that news, maybe organ transplant stocks or maybe TransMedics is getting down because of that, and there's some federal level investigation because of that idiosyncratic event. Very unfortunate, of course, but it's still, one in 100,000 people waiting for transplant. So I don't think this is indicative of a systemic problem. And of course, because of that, I don't know why, but we're getting a stock cheaper. I don't understand why this stock is down 27% from the recent peak. I think this is getting an interesting entry point. If I look at my valuation for this stock, it's trading at a 0.24 for a stock that really has 2 modes. One is an FDA-approved organ transplant device that disrupts dry ice and that allows organs to live for multiple days in these machines. That's the point number 1. And then 2, you have an airline. They have their own airline of small private jets that are just dedicated to organ transplant, and of course having these planes, having these routes, having these relationships provides another layer of moat. So I still think they have a very long runway, and this was a video I had made a while back talking about their 2028 target. As you know, on this channel, I love to invest in companies that give us long-term targets. In the case of TransMedics, 10,000 transplants by 2028 is their target. And so this stock still has a 3 to 4x to go in order for them to get there. And so if they get there, will the stock price follow the tripling to quadrupling in organ transplants? Will the stock price follow? Well, maybe not 1-to-1, but I believe it will likely continue to outperform. And so I will be looking into this stock over the next few weeks and see if I want to add to it or not, because I'm way up on this one, but I want to see if I want to add to it or not, because it's true that this drop, in my view, I don't find it warranted. So that might be an opportunity again. So TransMedics is one of these top stocks that I want to talk about today that is getting cheaper. Another stock I want to talk about today that is getting cheaper is Celsius. So let's talk about Celsius. I've done multiple videos on Celsius. I've been adding to Celsius over these past 4 weeks. I think the stock has reached quite a cheap territory, and it's really unwarranted, their drop. Why is it unwarranted? Because we know that Pepsi, well, they had indicated they had 12 million cases too many, so by now it must be maybe even the high single-digit million cases too many. They essentially were too bullish on the drinks, they ordered too much, and they gotta go through their inventory. I think a lot of this may have to do with flavors too, like what if Pepsi, for example, stocked the wrong flavor and that flavor was not popular? Celsius has dozens of flavors and rotates them all the time, so maybe they ordered too many of a flavor. In my view, this is a short-term issue because the sell-through at the stores worldwide is still happening. The expansion in Europe is still going strong. They're also going to Canada. They're also going to Australia. Okay, and I see my anecdotal evidence on this one, which is the other day, I went to Costco, so the pallets go empty in about 1 day at Costco. They had 3 pallets of cases of Celsius. I know we restock these every day. I was here towards the end of the day. The 3 pallets had been entirely, picked apart, and the drinks sell through. There's a major sell-through at the store. Of course, my local Costco, that's an anecdote, right? That is an anecdote. Take that with a grain of salt. But I see this drink being just as popular as it used to be. It's a top 3 drink among Gen Z, among today's teenagers. That was a Piper Sandler report that I had presented a few weeks back regarding to e.l.f. stock and e.l.f. Cosmetics, which is another company that is very popular among Gen Z. Celsius, in my view, that's a Gen Z play. That's a young people play. That's a play of people for people who don't have yet their energy drink of choice. And this may be the energy drink of choice of an entire generation. Now, looking at the price again, when I look at my numbers, how much am I paying for that growth, right? So on EV over GP over RG, how much am I paying for that growth? I'm paying a 0.24, so that's in the top quartile, cheapest in my spreadsheet, knowing that typically I would never add a stock that's over a 1 on this on my spreadsheet. I only add it when it's a matter of comparison. And I think for Celsius, it's fair to compare it to Monster. Monster is obviously a much bigger company, both in terms of enterprise value, in terms of revenue, but also it's it's much more expensive in whatever metric you look at. It's much more expensive. It's more expensive in EBITDA metric, quite a bit more expensive on a gross profit, quite a bit more expensive on a EV over revenue metric. So roughly on whether it's gross profit or revenue, roughly Monster trades about twice more expensively as Celsius for a growth rate at Monster of 9%, which does not get me excited on this channel because I'm a hyper-growth channel. I want my stocks, my companies to grow at 30%, as you well know if you follow this channel. And 3 out of 4 of the companies that I present to you in this video grow at higher than 30%. And so that is reassuring to buy a stock like that because they won't be diluted by monetary printing and monetary inflation because they catch on not only the new share of US dollars being issued, but beat that by a handsome amount. And of course, the rule of 40 for Celsius is a 62. That's outstanding. I want my stocks to achieve a rule of 40 or more. And rule of 40 is the addition of revenue growth and the addition of EBITDA margin. That's what I use on this channel. Some people use net profit. I much prefer EBITDA margin. I think it's more fair. It's more consistent to compare stocks against each other. And I get a 62 there, by the way, if you're wondering. TransMedics, what made that company super special was the growth rate at 84% and the rule of 40 at a 96 for TransMedics. Very special company. Celsius is also special. Celsius is, of course, a consumer play, so perhaps much easier to understand to most of us because it's anybody can spend, $1.50 to try a Celsius drink and make their opinion for themselves. Can't really try the TransMedics service, right? So e.l.f. Moving on to e.l.f. e.l.f. is a third stock that I like very much now. It's my second beauty play, believe it or not. I have actually 2 makeup companies in the portfolio. I can't believe I'm saying this, but with gross margin in the 70%, I'm going to be compelled. With gross margin 70% on a physical product, I'm going to be compelled. So all this kind of my original beauty play in that space, but of course, I was buying odd when e.l.f. Beauty, e.l.f. was much more expensive. e.l.f. Beauty is 50% off right now. Odd is up. So now we are getting e.l.f. Beauty, which is a more mature company, for a price that is fairly similar to Oddity. Oddity, by the way, their brand is Il Maquillage. They make foundation and they use AI to match the color of the foundation to the color of the skin. So that's even a next-gen company. e.l.f. is kind of this direct-to-consumer play. It's a little bit of a hybrid, but it's a newer brand, and it's a top brand among Gen Z. So if you go back to that Piper Sandler survey about e.l.f., Gen Z, what is the top brand of cosmetics for teenagers right now? Well, it is e.l.f. e.l.f. And if you look at how well they've been doing, they're the only brand that has been taking market share, while other brands have all been losing market share. So that's why I called it the Tesla of cosmetics, because if you look at the only brand brand that is taking market share right now in the auto industry is Tesla, and all of the other brands of automobiles are down. So this e.l.f. thing kind of looks the same. Of course, they have a large direct-to-consumer component at e.l.f. They have a website, they have a loyalty program, they do a lot of stuff for online sales. But because they are this somewhat of a legacy company, they were started in the mid-2000s, right? So in the mid-2000s, you still had to have distribution deals, so they still have high distribution, especially at stores like Target, and because of the field, right? Because you're dealing in the field of beauty, you're dealing with color. Color is paramount when you go buy a product. It's the color, the shade, the tone. It's a play all about the color, and of course, the challenge of selling makeup online is that the color is going to vary based on the screen quality of your device, of your phone. How good is the screen quality on the phone? The color is never going to come out the same. So a lot of people still want to see makeup in person so that they can actually assess the color, which if you follow that sector, that was the bet of Oddity. The bet of Oddity is forget about trusting your phone for the color. We're just going to use AI to do the right color, and you're going to trust us. And I think that's taking off for Oddity. I'm happy to own Oddity for the long term, but I think e.l.f. has kind of this hybrid approach. Anyways, of course, I wouldn't be talking about e.l.f. if it was trading at an EV over GP over RG of 1 or even 0.5. Right? I'm talking about e.l.f. because it's cheap right now. There's 0.2. How much am I paying for that growth at e.l.f.? I'm paying a 0.2. This is a company that is predicted to grow sales at 39% next 12 months. They are highly profitable, both from a gross margin standpoint and an EBITDA margin standpoint. And they achieve, e.l.f., especially here, achieves the rule of 40. I'm talking about e.l.f. right now. Achieves the rule of 40 at 54, a rule of 54. So I really enjoy e.l.f. Additionally, this is a company that has had outstanding performance, outstanding operating leverage. They have performed very well despite the drop. So if you look at despite the drop, they're still, over the past 10 years, they're still growing at 18% roughly ARR. It's what they've grown for the past, let's call it 8 years, not 10. For the past 8 years, we've roughly grown at let's call it 19%, 18.7, 19%. So they are still performing in line with the NASDAQ despite the 50% drop. Of course, I believe the stock is undervalued right now because, if it was at all-time high and if it was an 18%, I wouldn't find that compelling. That number of ARR is going to go up if the stock returns back to the level that it used to trade at, which I believe it will. I do not understand why the stock got cheap all of a sudden. It was a Wall Street darling, and all of a sudden it got cheap. Some of the compelling reasons that people say, well, it got cheap is because the tariffs, the current tariffs that they are on the makeup is made in China. The current tariff is 25%. A lot of people are saying, well, if a new administration in the US comes, maybe the tariff is not going to be 25%. Maybe the tariff is going to be 50%, 100%. It's a threat, sure, but if Trump is elected, what are the odds? How would I even begin to know that makeup would be a priority to raise tariffs on? This is when I'm going to talk about Enphase. This is another argument against Enphase, as people are saying that Trump is going to raise the tariffs on battery from China, and if he raises the tariff on battery from China, Enphase is going to be impacted. To me, this is. How many decisions have to happen to get to this conclusion, right? It's not a straightforward interpretation. If this is bad, then this happen. It's a if this happens, then this, then that, then this, then that. You have a chain of action with 4 or 5 things that have to happen to assume that just because an election goes a certain way, tariffs are going to come back for this company. I have no reason to believe that tariffs are imminent on tariff increases are imminent on makeup. Sure, there may be tariffs on China, but those tariffs, in my view, they're more likely to be on things like cars. They're more likely to be on things like steel, the more famous, more industrial base aspects. Not necessarily makeup. And they have started removing their dependence from China. They have started manufacturing elsewhere, I talk about other places in Asia in my prior video about where they could manufacture, but another place they could manufacture is India. That's another thing, and the CEO of e.l.f. has strong ties to India, so they could manufacture in many places, not just China. And the stock, and perhaps this is the last thing I'll say, is they are confident that their stock is undervalued because they're executing a 500 million share buyback. So that's confidence right here. You're talking about 10% of a float if they execute that buyback, and I trust that they will execute that buyback. So lots of things are pointing out to a cheap stock right now for e.l.f. for me, and I think the threat of the tariffs increasing on Chinese makeup is way out in the distance, for me, and this ignores the international expansion. So again, you got to take a risk, right? If you invest in, if you want to beat the market, if you want to beat the denominator, you have to take a risk. No financial advice, but I'm willing to take that risk. It's a risk that I'm willing to take. Think about these 4 stocks I'm presenting today, right? If one goes wrong and 3 go right, well, guess what? The portfolio still outperforms, right? You really have to get it way wrong for the portfolio to hurt. And the last one is Enphase, and Enphase is actually still up from the bottom of 2023, believe it or not. I have a hard time understanding why the stock is trading at $91. Enphase seems to be trading so low because a lot of people are saying, well, the Powerwall is going to be winning and everybody's going to get the Powerwall. And I think the Powerwall from Tesla Powerwall 3, it's a very compelling product. Frankly, I may be compelled to get it. I think it's a great product. I own Tesla, much more Tesla than Enphase in my portfolio, so it actually benefits me much more if they win that market, although it could erase Enphase, which is bad. But I don't think it will, because I feel like my study tells me that microinverters are a whole different animal from string inverters. If you are not interested in string inverters from the get-go, you're just not going to consider the Tesla Powerwall. The Tesla Powerwall is a string inverter that has a 10-year warranty. It has a 10-year warranty, and it's a string inverter. A microinverter, it's panel-level analysis, panel-level management. It's turning your whole house into each panel become its own power plant. It's panel by panel monitoring. There's a lot of things. It's a 25-year warranty. A microinverter is a 25-year warranty. And it's a product that gets many, many more IRA benefits, 11 cents per watt AC. So you may get into a situation for next generation microinverters at Enphase, you may get into a situation where the gross margin shoots up to 80% because they collect so much IRA subsidy. And there we go. The IRA subsidy, people say, oh, these subsidies are going to go away if the polls are correct, and if Donald Trump gets elected, these subsidies are going to go away. And I say to that, this is not understanding the American political system and how it works, and how you need 60 votes in the Senate, and you need the House, and you need the White House, and you need all 3 of them to change a law. Changing a law is not that easy, right? I mean, if you think about the tax cuts that we got in the US in, was it 2017, was it the tax cuts? Those tax cuts are still going on until 2026. You think the current administration would have wanted to remove those tax cuts? I bet you they did. They wanted to remove the tax cuts, but it's not like you can, because this is a very stable political system where once something is voted in, something is voted in. It's been voted in. And given the fact that say Trump, for example, is close to Elon Musk now, I guess, as I'm going to say it, I doubt he would go after the environmental policies, because he now has a supporter on the environmental camp, right? So assuming that the subsidies are going to go away and hurt Enphase, or assuming that new tariffs are going to come, it seems to me it's a surface level analysis, it's a surface level risk. There's a lot of things that have to go in a certain way for these policies to be removed, and so I think it's an overreaction. That's just me. As far as the threat of Tesla to Enphase, I think it's definitely a threat to any maker of string inverters. If you make a string inverter, yes, you should be threatened. Like if you're Fronius, if you're SMA, if you're Solar Edge, Tesla's coming for you. It's coming for string inverters. But if you're making microinverters, you're an entirely different technology, an entirely different animal to begin with. You're fully different to begin with, and so I just think to say that a new product can entirely erase Enphase out of existence is a little too extreme. If that makes some sense. I would not shy away from making that statement from, say, string inverters, because I think string inverters, if Tesla's choosing string inverters, Tesla's going after that tech, and I think if you look at the stock of Solar Edge, for example, it's a riskier story. But anyways, very happy that Tesla's doing well. I've covered at length this topic, so you can get all of my thoughts in these 2 videos that I made on this. Whether Tesla is a real threat or not, and I go into the details, and whether Enphase is a good deal right now. I think it's a good deal right now at 91. Frankly, I'm waiting for the earnings next week to see if I add more. I added a little bit at $92 actually, and now I'm waiting for the earnings next week, because it's true. Maybe in the earnings we'll have something that gets it even cheaper. But maybe it also goes up 10% after the earnings, so we don't really know. So I'm holding off and waiting for the earnings on that one. And the earnings season is about to start, so there's a few stocks that I'm going to be holding off, waiting for the earnings to decide if I buy more or not. But the conclusion, whatever happens at the earnings, the conclusion for me is I want to wait until the IQ9s. I want to wait until the new Enphase battery to really assess whether this is a threat or not. And I want to wait until the election too to see which way it's going to go. To me, this stock right now, it's still a stock in which I have conviction. Some people in the comment section have said, "Oh, I have some sunk cost fallacy type bias," and the answer to that is don't worry about that. If I find the stock to be bad, I will sell it. And I've sold out of stocks which were mistakes, like Open Door, for example. So no worries about that. Anyways, this was no financial advice, not investment advice, just entertainment. Hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, please follow me on X, please follow me on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.